I'm Teisha Bader with Shalom TV's news update for Tuesday, October the 29th, 2013. U.S. President Barack Obama and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke over the phone yesterday and addressed several regional issues, including peace negotiations between Israel and the Palestinians and recent developments related to Iran. The White House said the call was part of regular consultations between the two leaders. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry said yesterday that it would be the height of irresponsibility for Washington not to test Iran's diplomatic overtures in regard to its nuclear program. Kerry made the comments at a gala in Washington in support of nuclear disarmament held by the Plowshares Fund, where Kerry said that the U.S. has, quote, an opportunity to try to put to test whether or not Iran really desires to pursue only a peaceful program and will submit to the standards of the international community in the effort to prove that to the world. In what some in the media suggest could be a reference to Israel's call for increased pressure on Iran, Kerry further said some have suggested that somehow there's something wrong with giving diplomacy a chance. He said we will not succumb to those fear tactics and forces that suggest otherwise. Israel Radio reports that Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas is, quote, softening his resistance to the idea of an interim agreement with Israel during peace negotiations. Up until this point, Abbas has rejected any such suggestion, saying that only a final status deal that would include arrangements on the challenging issues of Jerusalem and the Palestinians' right of return was on the table. According to the Israel Radio report, Abbas is no longer totally dismissing the possibility of an interim agreement, which could postpone the resolution of those tougher issues. Meanwhile, Palestinian Foreign Minister Riyad al-Maliki said that the Palestinian Authority is committed to the schedule of 9 months that were allotted for the peace talks with Israel. Israel appeared today before the United Nations Human Rights Council in Geneva to participate in the Universal Periodic Review process for the first time since it cut ties with the group a year and a half ago. All 193 UN member nations undergo this review, which examines the country's overall human rights record. As we reported to you yesterday, Israel had agreed earlier this week to participate in the review and renew ties with the UNHRC after severing those ties back in March of 2012, following the UN body's appointment of a fact-finding mission on how Israel's settlements in the West Bank affect Palestinians. Israel's ambassador to the UN in Geneva, Eviatar Manor, had phoned UNHRC President Remigiusz Henschel of Poland on Sunday to inform him of Israel's decision. Israel said it is prepared to review several human rights issues in Geneva today, including the issue of the Bedouin in the Negev and the Women of the Wall group in Jerusalem who fight for equal rights for women to pray at the Western Wall. Manor told the review that the ongoing release of Palestinian prisoners who had murdered Israelis is proof of the country's determination to end the decades-long conflict. Israel, he said, was committed to reaching an historic reconciliation and building a better future for Israelis and Palestinians alike. And 3 High Court of Justice judges met this afternoon to discuss the petition of the bereaved families and Al-Maghor terror victims organization against the release of those 26 Palestinian terrorists, which is scheduled for late tonight in Israel. The families and the organization filed a petition with the High Court against the release, claiming that, quote, releasing murderers with blood on their hands is infected with immorality and is a fatal blow to the existence of a society founded on values of ethics and law. The prisoners are expected to be released tonight as part of a 4-phase release of a total of 104 prisoners decided upon Israel as a gesture to the Palestinian Authority at the restart of peace talks in July. Earlier this week, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu called the decision to release the terrorists one of the toughest of his career as prime minister. He told a meeting of his Likud Beitenu faction yesterday, "I am certain that all the prime ministers who made this decision before me agonized over it as well, due to the injustice of villains being released before they serve the full term of their sentences." He said, "My heart is with the bereaved families, and it pains me," adding this decision is a necessity given the reality in which we live. And Israel's Defense Minister Moshe Ya'alon also weighed in on the upcoming release. He said today that the ministerial committee that dealt with the issue of prisoners' release convened heavy-heartedly and with difficult feelings to decide who among the prisoners will be released this time. He said, "We don't like it, but we have a responsibility as a government to steer the country according to long-term strategic considerations." He added, "I remind that these prisoners are old and committed their crimes prior to the Oslo Accords. We will keep following them." The Jewish Week reports that the Jewish National Fund received its largest gift in the organization's history, which led its annual campaign for 2013 to be its largest ever. JNF was the recipient of the estate gift of more than $60 million from the estate of self-made millionaire John Barushin, who has funded JNF projects over the years that have paid for water projects in Israel and Zionist education initiatives. Barushin was born in Poland and his family was killed during the Holocaust. JNF CEO Russell Robinson said Barushin was impressed with JNF's business model of innovation, vision, and ingenuity, and that he and his wife had said they wanted to take on bold initiatives that would connect children to Zionism and make Israel strong. Robinson said with this trust, JNF will be establishing the JNF Center for Zionist Education and Advocacy in Barushin's name, from which all their programs promoting Zionist education and advocacy would stem. A delivery man for a Midtown restaurant in New York City was awarded $900,000 by a jury verdict this week for enduring years of anti-Semitic harassment. Adam Warshynski of Washington Heights worked at Manja 57 from 1992 to 2008, where he was subjected to ongoing anti-Semitic harassment from 3 supervisors at the restaurant, who, among other things, called him dirty Jew and joked about the poison gas used in the Nazi gas chambers during the Holocaust. They also docked his tips and used to throw pennies at him. Warshynski told the New York Post that much of his father's family died at the hands of the Nazis. His lawyer said that he stayed at the job for all those years because he was older and afraid that no one would hire him. As far as the large award, his lawyer said Warshynski was in shock and that this was a moral victory.
All I came from Miami, FLA. Hitchhiked away across the USA. Plucked her eyebrows along the way, then shaved his legs. Said, honey, he is a she. Said, ain't a woman in the wild side.
Rock pioneer Lou Reed passed away this week. Reed, who was Jewish, died Sunday at the age of 71 of complications following a liver transplant that he had done earlier this year. Born in Brooklyn in 1942, Reed and his band, the Velvet Underground, while not achieving great commercial success, made a great impact on the rock scene of the 60s and 70s with classics like Walk on the Wild Side, and was considered one of the most influential and distinctive songwriters of his generation. And finally tonight on Shalom TV, coming up at 6:30, Mark Golub speaks with many of those attending this year's America-Israel Friendship League dinner at the Plaza Hotel in New York City. And then later tonight, Benny Kashriel, mayor of the West Bank city of Ma'ale Adumim outside of Jerusalem, discusses Israeli-Palestinian relations with Mark Golub on L'Chaim at 9. That's here on Shalom TV and shalomtv.com. And that's Shalom TV's news update for Tuesday, October the 29th, 2013. I'm Teisha Bader.